So listen, no social care detail. And, Damien Green, former Deputy Prime Minister, I'll talk to him after 2. He said it was essential that it was in this Queen's speech, and it wasn't.
Well, social care reform was mentioned in the Queen's speech. And I think what's important is the consultation process that comes next. So obviously, since the Prime Minister became the Prime Minister, we've had all the turmoil over Brexit and election. We've had a global pandemic. And I think most people would agree that in the midst of a global pandemic, there isn't the resources, there isn't the focus to carry out what's going to be a huge generation-long social care reform. Now is the time to really dig into that. And I think there is a reason why it's going to take a while. And that's because these are huge, complex decisions that are going to affect millions of people. So it's right that we do it as thoroughly as possible and with as much consensus as possible. So it was in the Queen's speech.
It wasn't. Come on, don't insult my intelligence. Listen, Miriam, that's a bit like me. That's a bit. I listened as well. Listen, Miriam, I listened as well. But I listened as well. But in the last half hour, I've said proposals on social care. I've said those words about 4 times. It doesn't mean I'm solving the crisis of social care, and neither does neither. Well, it doesn't even mean it doesn't mean I'm attempting to. It means I'm talking about things. Proposals on social care reform will be brought forward. That's what Boris Johnson said, and they're not there.
Well, they are being brought forward. That is the point of the Queen's speech. Let's just put this in context. When our welfare state was created in the 40s, we had a hugely different demographic environment to what we do now. Most women didn't work. People didn't live long into retirement. We've got a completely different situation.
We know the reasons. We know.
20 years more than they used to.
We know that conversation's been had.
Longer. So this isn't an easy problem to solve, and that's why it's going to take time to bring forward the consultations, to get consensus, and to get something strong and robust that is going to take us forward. So there is no detail on any of the bills in the Queen's speech. That isn't the point of the Queen's speech. Is to set out which bills will be brought before Parliament. That's what it's there to do. But I think it's very important that we take this time now to, in a committed way, get consensus, get cross-party support, and get the research and the planning that is needed to do to bring something forward that's robust and that isn't just picking something off the shelf just so that we can say we've done it, but actually falls down in 5 or 10 years' time.
But nobody's suggesting you should pick something off the shelf. I mean, see the dementia tax for details. But, there is a growing consensus. There has been for some years now, hasn't there, in the House of Commons around what's needed. No?
Yes, what I think there is a growing consensus, but how it's funded and how it's delivered, those are still questions to be answered. And I'll just go back to over the last year. Clearly, many tens of thousands of people in the healthcare system, in the civil service, their jobs have completely changed because they have been tackling a pandemic. And I think everybody would agree that that's the right thing for them to have been doing.
Of course.
Unfortunately, a number of our plans have been delayed or thrown off track, but it's right that we focused on responding to the pandemic. But now, as we're coming out of that, as we've seen the success of the vaccination programme, now is the time to pick up on that and go for it to get a really robust solution.
So when Boris Johnson said in 2019, I've got the quote right in front of me, and so I am announcing now on the steps of Downing Street that we will fix the crisis in social care once and for all, and with a clear plan that we have prepared to give every older person the dignity and security they deserve. Well, they haven't prepared it, have they?
Well, soon after so obviously there was a number of months of political turmoil before the December 2019 general election. Then, after that election, Matt Hancock wrote to all MPs asking for submissions, for contributions to start to gather this cross-party support. And then, of course, last March, everything changed as we went into global pandemic. And as I said, all resources were diverted to fighting that pandemic. And I would imagine that most people would agree that was the correct use of the resources at that point, rather than to continue to carry out review and continue to take this forward.